Hey everybody, welcome to Hear Us Out. I'm Patrick,
And I'm Paul.
and we're Hear Us Out, and you're not, because we're talking about Saturday Night Live. Well, actually, we're talking about, technically, Paul, one of the things we're talking about is Saturday Night. They're releasing a movie about Saturday Night Live, which was originally called Saturday Night, and then it went through a whole bunch of name changes, became Saturday Night Live. Um, we're not talking specifically about that movie, but that movie covers the first night that they went on air. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. I hope it's good because I'm a huge SNL fan, have been my entire life. But
Yeah.
SNL has been around for 50 years, Paul, and we're going to talk about some of the impact it's had on the industry.
Yeah, that's the to play up the we're not going to be talking about the movie, but it is a great sign of showing creatives versus business, especially at that perfect time, and really shows the impact that SNL had moving forward on creatives versus business, which is a great thing because as we're talking about tonight, um
Yeah.
the industry's business would have been absolutely ruined if SNL didn't go forward with the creatives because the amount of stuff that came out of it afterwards,
Yeah.
incredible.
If by the end of this episode you haven't at least once gone, oh, really? They came from SNL too? Then we'll have failed at our jobs. So 50 years, Paul. That's why the movie's happening. It's the 50th season. It's the 50th anniversary. It's been around a long time, which means we have a lot of people to cover. So I am going to suggest that we jump straight to it. And if I can get that thing to get off screen, there we go. We go right back to the start, way back to one Chevy Chase. When it comes to cast members setting the mold for being, breakout stars in their own right later on, Chevy Chase was the first. So much so that he was the first to leave Saturday Night Live. It's all contentious. We're not here to talk about that, but suffice it to say, Saturday Night, the TV show, Saturday Night Live happened. Had its problems, was a hit and a miss, and was a hit and all sorts of stuff. Counterculture darling that it was. Chevy Chase was a real powerhouse. Whether they love him or hate him now, for the next couple of decades, through the National Lampoons, the vacation movies and Christmas Vacation, etc., etc. Fletch, there was two of those movies. Three Amigos. He had movie upon movie upon movie. Paul. He was a movie star at one stage in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and it really shows from SNL talent in the sense that he was able to hone his craft and everything like that and grow his popularity that when he moved out of SNL, he was able to go into the movie industry and, use those talents that he learned with the writers and everything like that to really, really show his, skill set.
Yeah,
And that's a growing kind of trend with the SNL talent.
yeah, you'll see that repeated, and it's not just movies. In the latter days, obviously, his most recent big famous project would have been Community, show that I love, Paul. Show I think you like a lot too. Um, you know, Chevy Chase has been for the 50 years of SNL. Chevy Chase has been a star or in some way in the limelight for 50 years now. Since then, so that's not a bad one to start with. But most people go, "Oh yeah, look, we knew Chevy Chase was SNL cast, original cast still." Paul, Jane Curtin. A lot of people don't know her name, and they should, because everybody knows her face from a plethora of movies. And I see Brian's in the chat. Good evening, Brian. Let us know when we mention somebody that you're like, I'd never heard of them, or I had no idea they were in SNL. Because you're a good barometer of kind of, you've seen a lot of things over the years.
I didn't know Kate. I didn't know
Oh,
she was in it.
there you go. So Jane Curtin was
Jane
one of the
Curtin.
original. I have a lovely, lovely picture there. I was so happy I could find one with a Dublin clock in the background. A little nod to the fact that we're Irish folks. She was on the desk with Dan Aykroyd and others, and it was hilarious. But she went on. Kate and Ali. If you grew up in the 80s, so Paul, this is pre you, it's my era. Kate and Ali was one of those things. You came home from school and it was on, and it was just one of the many sitcoms. But it didn't stop there for her. All the movies, all the cameos in things, all the side parts, never necessarily leading person. But Third Rock from the Sun, I'm assuming you remember.
Yeah,
That had a
I
big
do.
long run.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I know it's a great one.
And she's one of those people that most of the time when you mention her and then say, she was part of the original Saturday Night Live cast and she was there for a few years and she was brilliant, people go, no, really? You sure it's the same one? No, that's her. Not this Jane lady, no, though, says, obviously a new Chevy, but not. So there you go. I'm already 1 for 2 on this, Paul. So we've hit the bare minimum. There's obviously the talent factory that was that first season. Gilda Radner and others that we're not mentioning now, they were all still brilliant. It's, Gilda went on and you famously had a wonderful relationship with Gene Wilder. She's an amazing talent, but if we're talking about people who went on and had an effect on the movie and TV industry in front of the camera, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, and the fact that the Blues Brothers was a SNL sketch that then broke out into a massive hit movie.
Yeah, it was a fake real music number, as in they were the other musical guest on the show, and it turns out that it was just another sketch, which was great. Dan Aykroyd didn't speak at all. He only played the harmonica, kind of thing. So yeah, that really shows the talent in the sense that like they were able to show their skill sets, even incubate kind of like characters that they really really enjoyed, and then when they left, able to bring those characters and their stories like with them. Obviously, SNL would also have a person making the movie and stuff, or
it was their first production, actually, the first spin-off production from SNL and Lorne. And Brian says legends there. That's absolutely true. And if you consider, let's take John Belushi, who had a shorter career due to passing away, tragic loss. I'd love to know what his career would have looked like had he been able to fulfill what would have been, no doubt, a long and successful career. He had a massive impact in a short time. Dan Aykroyd, massive impact in a short time, and then just kept having an impact. Like Ghostbusters, obviously, is going to come up again because of some other SNL people that are famously in it. I couldn't help but put Dragnet up there. Dragnet had to be up there because we used to do a little series called Rapid Review. We should have done Dragnet. Criminally overlooked movie. One of my favorites. Tom Hanks, Dan Aykroyd. Nobody's ever seen it, and it's hilarious. So if you get nothing else from this episode, watch Dragnet next time you see it, either on TV or on your streaming service.
You might end up rewatching some of the movies that we mentioned as well, like Blues Brothers. Definitely going to rewatch Blues Brothers.
Well, you should watch that at least once every 3 years, I think. Greatest musical movie ever. I will say this, though. Ghostbusters does segue nicely into the other obvious that people go, oh, I knew he was in SNL. Bill Murray. But everybody always thinks he was original cast. He came in slightly later. So, Chevy Chase left. Bill Murray showed up. Bill Murray, being the just amazing comic genius that he was and is, instant impact. And became a star. Again, I chose to show Stripes, Paul, because everybody else will talk Ghostbusters or Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou or whatever. The overlooked classics, anything that Bill Murray and Harold Ramis did together, good enough for me. I love those two men together. But I also chose Groundhog Day because there's another SNL cast member that's often overlooked, and that's Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's brother, who was in Groundhog Day as the local mayor. So he was the one tapping away to see if Punxsutawney Phil was going to see his own shadow.
Yeah, also his voice is very recognizable when you do hear it. You'll hear once you hear it once, you'll be just like, "Oh, it's him!"
Yeah,
and like then a string of other characters will come along just to kind of show you.
And Brian here says Bill Murray icon. I say Brian Doyle Murray also icon because you're right. His voice is so recognizable, and the number of movies that he's had bit parts in, and we're going to be talking about Wayne's World later. Nobody's surprise. He's in that as the I can't remember, Noah's Arcade, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like every time he's ever showed up in something, he's been perfectly cast, which just means he's brilliant every time he's in something. Because they're like, oh, that's perfect casting. No, that's just because he's brilliant. So Bill Murray, we could talk all night about. I want to shout out his brother because he doesn't get enough credit. And people don't really realize he was also an SNL alumni.
Well, that's it. Once again, lots of these people probably not recognizable, but have been impactful in the front camera screen.
Oh yeah, and if we stop, even let's not go through individuals as much as whole genres of TV, late night TV. There's no way to say this. There's nothing else that's had as direct an impact in the last 50 years on late night TV as SNL. So the late night talk shows. On screen, we've got Conan O'Brien, who was a writer famously for SNL and for The Simpsons, which again, I think we have to talk about at some stage. You've obviously got Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon. I'm trying to remember Paul Schaefer's name right now. Paul Schaefer, by the way, anybody's like, well, he didn't have a talk show. He was part of the original SNL group. He's a musical man and was David Letterman's. Is it right to call him sidekick slash band leader? Is that the right terminology?
I would say
for it?
band leader is probably the right kind of. He bounced. They bounced off each other while there wasn't a guest on it.
Yeah.
Or if they needed to kind of segue away from topics.
Yeah, he had plenty of interaction. So he was band leader plus, let's say. And you know, Dennis Miller is there in the corner. Dennis Miller is a man I won't always agree with. Dennis Miller is an interesting dude, to put it politely. But him, Chevy Chase, a bunch of other SNL stars went on to have their own late night shows at one point or another. And for my money at this stage, if you were to try and guess who would replace Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and all the late night hosts, Paul, if I was to start placing bets now for the future, I would start by looking at the SNL cast list and go, I wonder who there is going to be timing out at the right time to take over.
I would also be looking at the people who are doing the desk.
Very much so.
Because
Yeah.
that's like
Colin Jost, Michael Che, yeah.
Yeah, like it's ridiculous how you can look at the SNL desk and then look at the late night talk show hosts and just be like, hey, a lot of these guys are like, on the desk, kind of thing. So,
and I think Seth is maybe the best. I'm going to show my colors here, Paul. I'm a Seth Meyers fan more than a Jimmy, either of the Jimmys as far as late night goes. But Jimmy Fallon, I have the Family Guy issue with Jimmy Fallon. Stop laughing during sketches. It's okay to break, but you just break too often. That's all you did on SNL. There's that old sketch. But no, look, respect him, funny dude. But I think Seth Meyers is one of those people that when he was SNL on the desk, you could just see that he was built for late night TV after he was done with SNL. Like there's nobody more perfectly built for it.
Yeah, also a triple threat in the sense that he was a writer. He was a writer, a really funny person, and also a really good host. So like that's a really good kind of combination for being able to do a late night talk show.
Which it's always kind of cute because I think he himself will admit that he wasn't the best sketch comedian. He was a great writer and great head writer, but he wasn't sometimes the best sketch actor. So the desk was a great way that he was able to be in front of the camera effectively. But I think he does himself a disservice because when you watch Seth Meyers now, you can see he's doing sketch as part of his own show sometimes. Big fan of the man. I should move on. We mentioned thanks to Conan O'Brien, like huge presence in late night, part of the big late night kerfuffle back when he should have taken over from Jay, and then Jay screwed him, and Jay and I want him hate each other, but they love each other, and then blah blah blah, all the good stuff, the drama, Paul, the drama.
The late night talk show drama. I didn't know that was going to be a thing for my life, but
yeah. Who knew that we needed that mini soap opera happening? But he also wrote for another famous show that would not exist without the talent of SNL. That's The Simpsons. Now, Phil Hartman up there at the top again. Rest in peace, tragically killed. But Phil Hartman was such a staple. I think they called him, the Rock or something like that in SNL because he was the one that everybody looked to hold it together. But in The Simpsons, Paul, the iconic voices that he covered, not just the two that are on screen. So it's
Troy McClure.
Troy McClure. I'm trying to think of the lawyer's name. Hutt. Is it Lionel Hutt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so much so that you can see the picture there. The drawing of Troy McClure is a little bit of Phil Hartman.
Yeah, it is. It is uncanny how they really those two guys. Really, they actually look like. Funny enough, they both look similar to each other, and they look like Kennys. The Kennedys.
Oh yeah. They've
and
got
on
a
top of
Kennedy
it, then
look.
they look like So it's just a ridiculous full coincidence kind of thing of them all looking like it. And I think it's that time error look. Like that period.
But his ability to, again, he acted in TV and film also, but his ability on SNL to be the straight man, and then when he wasn't being the straight man, it was even more impressive. But The Simpsons couldn't be The Simpsons without his voice, and the same goes for Harry Shearer. Harry
Yeah.
Shearer just covered so many people, and an SNL cast member that again is going to come up later on. See, this is the thing; they hit so many big things that went on to have wide ranging effect. Now, Paul, I wanna drop in one real quick one, a little mention for John Lovitz, because I happen to like John Lovitz. He annoys many people, but not me. I wasn't a huge fan of The Critic, which was his Simpsons kind of moment, and
Yeah.
he even showed up in The Simpsons. But it's, again, you can't be in SNL and then just fade into obscurity. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be on the cards for many. Everybody goes on and has a longer lasting impact.
Yeah, I like him. He plays really good specific like characters and secondary characters and stuff like that. Like I don't see him and automatically go, I want to turn this off.
No, I love John Lovitz, but a lot of people would say, well, he doesn't really have range, does he? And I'm like, yeah, no, he doesn't have range. That's fine. He's not going to do Saving Private Ryan, but he'll give you the best John Lovitz you've ever got. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. We didn't hold it against Clint Eastwood or John Wayne or anybody else. Why hold it against the lovable John Lovitz? But Paul, we've got to talk. There's a few people who've impacted more than just TV and movie, but also the stand-up with so many of the sketch actors. Second City and the Groundlings and all these great sketch comedy troupes that fed SNL and were one of the breeding grounds that were sketch comedies. Kindergarten to the college that is SNL. There's
Yeah.
also stand-ups. So you get people like Eddie Murphy.
Hmm.
There's no way on earth that you can talk about Eddie Murphy without saying he was a superstar. He started
Yeah.
very young on SNL and then owned the 80s. I've put up a small selection of stuff. And pretty much on screen, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Trading Places, Coming to America, The Golden Child. Like, half of these have had sequels. Some of them more than one, some of them more than two. Some of them even, one recently for Beverly Hills Cop. He was
Yeah.
Oscar nominated for Dreamgirls. The man has had a huge, like, he is a Hollywood star. And he was just a funny kid that saved some of the worst seasons of SNL.
I was gonna say he's one of the pillars of the SNL like worst timeline parts kind of thing, which shows the strength of him
Yeah.
and definitely kind of automatically like it wasn't that they lent on him, he took hold
Yeah.
and was able, and that really kind of shone about how he was like, oh, this guy is gonna go far,
Mhm.
even outside an SNL he's gonna go far, you know.
And while he was, riding the wave of fame, I've just thrown up Delirious and Raw there. Two, landmark comedy specials.
Mm,
You got Pryor's Hours here and there. You've got George Carlin's. You've got people, but Eddie Murphy put his name on that list to say, oh yeah, this is, it was VHS tapes back then, folks.
yeah.
But this is the comedy hour that I want. This is amazing. His comedy specials cannot be underestimated how big an impact they had. People will say, oh, some of it ages terribly now. Yes, some of everything ages terribly now.
Yeah.
But to say that they weren't impactful would be wrong. And Paul, I tried to remember the name of this when I was talking to you the other day, because I had to work out
Oh
whether or
yeah.
not I imagined it. Eddie Murphy was such a hot property that there is a movie that famously, it's called Best Defense, a Dudley Moore movie that apparently was so bad and going off the rails that they're like, right, how can we even make this thing watchable? And it says on this poster, strategic guest star Eddie Murphy. And the trailer had nothing but Eddie Murphy cut into it. Eddie Murphy came and was drafted in as a name to try and make a movie work. They put him in a tank. It's a movie about a tank that doesn't work. Basically, and let him just be Eddie Murphy for an hour and filmed it, cut it up, and we're like, right, I think we can inject this into our film and our film will be worth watching. Also, up to and including me, who when I went to the local video store, walking past all the VHS tapes, I was like, oh, Eddie Murphy in a film. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy's in the film for like 4 minutes or whatever they ended up using of him. It was a bait and switch, but that's how big he was in the 80s. He could do 10 minutes of work in a movie, and it would actually save it from being an absolute disaster. Well, it's still a bit of a disaster.
Well, yeah, but it's an amazing marketing ploy to be able to be just like, hey, we have Eddie Murphy in a movie during a period of time that he was so big that it would get people enough in seats that they can make at least some money back on their investment in the movie,
Yeah,
which is a big, huge. That's I don't know that many people working today
exactly.
that you would be able to just be like, I think they would expect. I think the actors would expect that the movie is of some kind of caliber.
Yeah.
But Eddie Murphy was probably such a kind of like, ridiculous name then that it was just like, let's just get him in there, and yeah, he gets bums and seats.
And that's it. Like the Brian said it best. He said Eddie Murphy was a proper megastar, and that's the thing. It's the guts of 40 years ago we're talking about now. So a lot of people know Eddie Murphy as the Nutty Professor or the Clumps, or the star who's not shining so brightly anymore, or whatever they might know him from. But not an awful lot of people seem to actually remember. And I don't blame anybody. If you're 20 years old right now, why would you remember any of this? But they're like, oh, I know who Eddie Murphy is. But they have no idea that SNL was where he started. Many of them don't even know he was a stand-up comedian. But also, a load of them are like, oh, yeah, he had a few films in the 80s. No, he had all the films in the 80s.
Yeah.
He was films in the 80s.
Yeah, you can definitely tell a period of time by looking at the majority of the actors from, like, it's just like, oh, Eddie Murphy, was a big huge star, so that's probably like,
Yep.
like mid to early 80s kind of thing, and it's just like, it's just an incredible kind of piracy just going, yeah, Eddie Murphy, 80s movies, action movies and stuff like that. It's just him.
Yep. And Paul, we better move it on along because there's so many more to do. I'm actually going to jump forward a little bit, and because we talked about Harry Shearer a moment ago, I'm going to pull up. Spinal Tap is incredibly famous, but Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer, that whole group were all in SNL, and Eugene Levy and a few others were actually in the, let's say, Canadian version of SNL, SCTV. Not related, by the way, so no insult to the Canadian show. It's brilliant in its own right. But you've got the series of these mockumentary movies that are some of my favorite now. Spinal Tap started it, but you have For Your Consideration, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, which is again criminally underwatched. But if you've ever watched Spinal Tap and enjoyed it, watch A Mighty Wind, because it is Spinal Tap with folk music. It is stunningly funny. Stunningly funny. But again, bunch of SNL people.
But that just shows the ensemble groups they also can form within SNL, which moves on, because there's going to be a couple of other examples of these kind of ensemble groups that start merging and kind of coming out of SNL, which is a great one.
And people forget that, Michael McKean and Christopher Guest, people refer to these movies a lot of the time as Christopher Guest movies because he was such one of the driving force behind some of the later ones. Again, if you didn't come from SNL, you didn't change Hollywood forever, is the way it starts feeling. So these people have had a huge impact. Paul, we've got just a little bit of time, so I want to quickly talk about some of the duos. I think after the break we'll come back to Mike and Dana, so our Wayne's World, and maybe talk about one of the often overlooked duos that came out of SNL, and that's Farley and David Spade. Now, everybody knows David Spade today, or if anybody who knows David Spade today knows that he was in SNL because he will mention it. It's one of the things he does. I happen to like David Spade. I find him to be funny. He had his own movies. He's had his own TV career with Just Shoot Me and all sorts of other stuff. He's maintained relevance. But he hasn't just maintained relevance. Between him and Farley, they were on SNL. When they left SNL, it was movies, TV. Unfortunately, again, tragically, we lost Chris Farley. I think it would have been wonderful to see where his career would have gone to. But none of these people ever just fade away. Unfortunately, some of them pass away. But, David Spade, still somebody that you will see and hear from today.
Yeah, big roast person now, and also connected to another SNL alumni. But yeah, Chris Farley, I don't. My thing is that Chris Farley has so much energy in everything he did that it still felt like he would possibly pass from a heart attack or something from his massive ridiculous energy that they brought to everything he did. So
Well, whatever van he is living in down by the river, I hope he's happy now because he made me laugh like heck. Okay, Paul, it's time to talk Wayne's World. I was going to say party time, excellent, but that just seems too on the nose. I, I, we talked about Bruise Brothers being a sketch that became, something bigger. I think Wayne's World is something that became super massive.
yeah, that's I think this is a big staple of kind of like 80s countercultural, yeah, 80s and kind of like 90s counterculture kind of thing of the metal kind of rock heads and stuff like that. So like
They were
this,
parodying My People, Paul. My People.
yeah, they really tapped into kind of like a culture there that was on such a rise during that period of time that there was no way that this couldn't then move into like movie kind of thing, or like at least a TV show
Well,
kind of show.
the writing for a sketch and the performance in the sketches were so lovable that it was one of those things. This can be so much bigger. This could hold a movie. Not every sketch could, but I think between Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, and all the writers, they had hit gold. And actually, Brian did say party time excellent. Thank you, Brian. I don't feel so bad for having to be the first thing that run through my mind. Dana Carvey, amazing stand up, amazing man for voices. Has had a career. It's not like Dana Carvey hasn't had a career. He did a few movies that were lesser successes. I think he suffered more than Mike Myers of being tied to Garth than Mike Myers was tied to Wayne.
Yeah,
But I think it's because he didn't go on to try and play characters as much as he tried to act and be funny. Whereas Mike Myers did the smart thing in a lot of ways. I'm just gonna get rid of my Wayne there for a minute, or my Wayne's World, and go straight to Mike. Shrek and Austin Powers. Like there's no underestimating. And again, Donkey is there, and guess who voiced Donkey? Eddie Murphy, the aforementioned SNL cast member. Like you can't get away from them; they're everywhere, Paul.
they are.
But
They are staples.
Mike Myers is genius. He did So I Married an Axe Murderer and other movies that were fine. But I think the thing that he managed to nail that perhaps Dana Carvey didn't is that he went and played characters. So like Austin Powers is a creation that could have easily been an SNL sketch.
Yes. Yeah, like there is, yeah, he moved into kind of character sketch movies kind of thing where he was able to take some of his experience from the SNL show and move it into kind of characters that he developed and stuff. I will say that David Carvey is in surprisingly voice actor movies. He's in Pets and like Transylvania. He did move into more kind of voice acting in a kind of way.
And Dana
After a
Carvey is
certain
one
period.
of the he's a brilliant comedian, but he's also one of the all-time great voice people.
Yeah,
And
as you were saying.
his impersonations, I'll put his version up against anybody else's version of a lot of things.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know if Mike Myers, I don't know where his career is going to go from here because somebody asked me again recently what happened to him, and I things went off the boil. I don't know. There's talk of maybe more Austin Powers. I'd like to see him come back if he wants to come back and be famous, but to say that he's been gone for a long time is probably unfair. It hasn't been a long time. He's done a lot of things. He's still doing things. There's a Shrek 5 coming out, I think, next year.
Yeah.
It's not like he's dropped off the face of the earth. It's just he was so in your face everywhere. You couldn't get away from him for 10 years or more, 15 years more like, that people are like, oh yeah, what happened to him? Nothing. He's not shining like a supernova right in your face all the time.
Yeah, like his last biggest thing was probably Bohemian Rhapsody, which is
Yeah.
in 2018.
But he was
like he's
in,
done. He
yeah,
has worked. He has
Inglorious
worked.
Bastards, he was in that as well, yeah.
No, but I meant Bohemian Rhapsody is probably his latest. As in
Mm,
like thing that people will remember. More often, he was the label
yeah,
manager,
yeah.
kind of thing. But like, yeah, I get it. I get it. He disappeared off the face of the earth. perceived
Exactly.
kind of thing. I think he's still doing voice acting in a lot of other different projects. He's also producing a lot more.
He became like Rain for Irish people. We're weirded out when it's not there one day, but you forget
Yeah,
that it's still wet and damp everywhere. So moving on from him though, there's a lot to this kind of grouping and people meeting an SNL or maybe meeting before and getting together. Like I've just thrown up, Chris Farley, the late great, Chris Rock, the great, again, some of the all-time great stand-up that's ever been committed to film/DVD. And Chris Rock, early movie careers had some issues like CB4 and stuff like that, which I still watch and laugh at. But Chris Rock's, he's movie and TV, plenty of movies that were even centered around him, plenty of side parts. Stole the show in Dogma. I absolutely still love his run in
yeah,
Dogma. Only Chris Rock could do that. He had Everybody Hates Chris as a TV show about him, not starring him, but created and written by in up to a certain extent. Like these are people who keep impacting long term, years of TV, years of movies. And we've already mentioned Spade. And then comes the big gun, Adam Sandler, who I believe if you listen closely, you can hear Netflix backing the money truck up to his house. Because I think
yeah,
that's how they have to do it now. They've paid him so much over the years.
yeah. They've just created their own mint.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. As I was talking, like just before, as I was talking, the ensemble groups who came out of the SNL thing is just an amazing. And yeah, the Adam Sandler, Spade, and Chris Rock is an incredible one because yeah, like Grown Ups is a perfect example of a load of groups that have gravitated towards Adam Sandler and that SNL kind of group, kind of thing. But it's an interesting fact that SNL groups or SNL creates these kind of groups together that work together and may go off and do their own things, but then come back and it's kind of like a constant collaboration because they've done it in the show. Which is an incredible kind of like feat
Oh
that
yeah,
SNL
and
has helped.
it is, it really is, and it's like because it's not even every generation. It's like in every generation, there's 4 periods of SNL groupings that can come along or superstars. I just spotted a comment from Brian who says, "I will stay quiet on Adam Sandler." You don't like Adam Sandler? I can't do a Sandler. What I can say though is, remember, Brian, it's not just Happy Madison or the Happy Madison production company, which is was Happy Gilmore. What was Billy Madison was the first movie.
This one was the first one.
Yeah, and a lot of recurring cast members. He has that kind of traveling troupe, the people he keeps rehiring, which is great. Waterboy, Grown Ups, all the rest. But you've also got Uncut Gems. You've also got Punch Drunk Love. He's
Big Daddy.
Scuba Steve. He has done an incredible amount. Mr. Deeds, his remake of that. Little Nicky, wasn't it? Yeah, the other one where he's
Yep.
yep.
Yeah, the one
You could actually play a game of, let's see if we can name all the Adam Sandler movies, and you would be 10 in each before you would run out and start like coming up short. But he's done more than just comedy. I think Adam Sandler deserves a little bit of credit for his ability as an actor as well as his ability to be a funny, goofy person, and remember, a writer as part of all of this. So yeah, Sandler may deserve his own currency at this stage because I think Netflix have him bought in for another, like I think it's another 3 to 4 movie deal that they're just going, hey, you make what we need, just keep doing it. So I hope if Elon Musk can be a billionaire, why not? Why not? I'm Sandler.
Yep. We also got Bruce saying that I hated Uncut Gems.
Okay,
He was in Cobbler. Have you ever watched Cobbler? I enjoy Cobbler.
and I'm not going to mention Click or the. Oh God, there's
What
the
was
other one
the
with the
twins
Pac-Man
movie?
Oh, Jack and
I was
Jill,
gonna
that
say-
was terrible.
Yeah, there's Pixels.
Pixels is the one I was thinking
Yeah.
of. I honestly I haven't watched that because when you know
Pixels?
something's going to be that bad, why bother? Just take everybody else's word on it and move on.
I've watched
However,
Pixels. I've watched it several times.
and is it good?
No,
Oh, okay. And Brian says not seen Happy Gilmore is fine. You know what? Good. I'm glad you said that because Happy Gilmore is great. And I will take a fine from you, Brian, because I understand that Mr. Sandler is not your favorite. But
By the way, if you want us to talk like this to you, get in the chat on our lives every Thursday. Like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and we're happy to chat with you while you're in the chat.
Yes, and if you're watching this in Futureland, we would love a subscribe. We really would love to get our subscriber numbers up. Love a like, but most of all, get into the comments. Even in the future, we read every single one, and we'll get back to you. I'd love to know if there's some other unknown people that people are like, really? They were in SNL?
And share us out. Get us out there.
That's
if you don't want to subscribe, share us out there.
Exactly, and we should have probably named the channel "Share Us Out" because that's what we really want most of the time. So from Sandler to somebody, and Brian, you can let us know if you like this guy or not. Will Ferrell. The reason he only gets one picture is because it's Will Ferrell. Like he has
too many movies,
and it's not just Anchorman. Like he has so many movies. He's in one of what I would call a modern Christmas classic. You know, Elf. He obviously drums for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anybody who doesn't get that, go and look up Chad from Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's there's only one Will Ferrell, and he's worth a fortune for a good reason. He's been making movies and printing money by being funny. But he was also just an exceptionally talented SNL cast member. And I think he's become so big that people have forgotten that he came from SNL. And that's a compliment. I think it's because he's massive. People go, oh yeah, so he actually started out on TV. Wow. But yeah, I see Brian's back. I like Will. He's a funny chap. Good.
Yeah.
We're back. We're back on the right side.
Like there's no way that you can't. Like, Will Ferrell is such a pinnacle of like, he is a older version of Ryan Reynolds. That's the thing. If you want to see what Ryan Reynolds' career is going to be like in the future, follow Will. And they're not that like, you know, they're not a massive age gap between the two of them.
That's true.
But it's a good way. It's a good way of showing kind of like where Ryan Reynolds' career is going, because Will Ferrell is just him. He's just a down nice guy who is fantastic at his job as a character actor. Fantastic.
I think we've not heard the last of Will, so to say that he's had an impact since SNL is it's obvious. But Paul, there's a whole group of people that we're skipping out on. We've got to speed along now, so I'm going to start picking up the pace and say TV and movie was what we've been covering, but we've mostly been talking movie first, TV after. I'm going to try and turn that around. I'm going to call up Julia Louis-Dreyfus. SNL, yes.
Yep.
Biggest TV show of all time in Seinfeld? Yes. Her own show, Veep? Yes. Like, she's in the Marvel universe now in both the Disney Plus TV shows and the soon-to-be Thunderbolts episode we did a couple of weeks ago. Go back, check it out, everybody. You know that I think she's one of the most talented and versatile people in Hollywood.
Yep.
To say that she's had an effect on TV would be that would be putting it mildly.
It'd be criminal underrated.
Yes,
it's probably one of the things. Like, a very versatile actor, which is, and as you said, a pinnacle. Like, Seinfeld is like Friends to a lot of people. That's how big, like, and it's bigger, you know. And it had to contend with a lot more because it also had to contend with Frasier, kind of thing. So like, and still like really wrecked it on nights. Like, so like that shows that she was in one of the biggest shows on air for ages, and as one of the main cast in primarily an all male cast, and held her own so well, like, you know, which is just amazing. And that's just moved her forward into loads of really good stuff, and I can't wait to see her in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I think she's already classing the joint up. I love her. I'm going to take two words you said and then a line that Brian just wrote before I move on. You said criminally underrated. Absolutely agree. And Brian's comment is she is brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's all that needs to be said. Speaking of brilliant people, they're often associated with each other because of working together on SNL, then working together and presenting things like the Golden Globes. But and they've both had huge impacts on producing and writing and acting in movies,
Hmm.
but also in front of the camera and behind the camera on a couple of massive TV shows. That again, these are not TV shows that ran for one season. Parks and Rec and 30 Rock. Their impact continues and is going to continue. We're now at the point where we're talking about people who have had a big impact in the last 10 years since they were on SNL or longer, and are probably going to continue for the next 12 to 14 to 20 years as well.
It's like, yeah, those two have been such an amazing cast, like from SNL into TV and stuff like that. It's incredible,
Yeah.
and them together once again, another ensemble thing piece. Like,
To just, some of the funniest people in the history of time. I could gush over those two all day.
and fighting the norms, the stereotype view that women aren't funny. These two break that mold like so much, and many of the SNL female cast members really break the mold of that stereotype kind of look, kind of thing. Like, absolutely, like sometimes they're the funniest people on screen.
Oh god,
Like among so many other well-known kind of male comedic actors.
But
Like,
you show me somebody who'll say the sentence "women aren't funny," and I will show you an idiot because they're the same person. And yeah, these are two people who helpfully point that finger of stupidity. Again, for time, Paul, because we're running long, we're only going to be able to touch on Andy Samberg. So many great movies, such a wonderful internet impact in the early days with The Lonely Island, doing musical numbers and musical parody. One of my favorite movies, Hot Shot, or not Hot Shot, Hot Rod. I love Hot Shots too. Hot Rod is brilliant. But Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a TV show that no network could ever kill, even though they tried. It would always get picked up somewhere else, and is now doing, since it's ended, going gangbusters on the streaming services.
Yeah, still fantastic rerun stuff. I go back to it every couple of like,
Samberg is not done with Hollywood or TV yet. Another 20 years of his reign shall be observed, I'm sure. And very much one of my favorite cast members, Bill Hader. I think of all of the TV shows to come out of anything, I think Barry is the one, I'd pick it as my favorite. Bill Hader is just a heck of a funny guy. He was, like I say, personal favorite. I'm biased, but I think Barry was so clever and so creative, and Hader is part of he's not just in front of the camera. He's writer, creator, director, all sorts of things. And I say that it's my favorite, and then you've got Jason Sudeikis on screen with Ted Lasso. Again, Sudeikis in plenty of movies, but with Ted Lasso gave me the feels in a way that I didn't know I still had the ability to do with Ted Lasso.
It was one of the TV shows that definitely got me through the ending of The Darkest Timeline.
Yeah.
There's no bad guy in that film or in that TV show, really. As much as like there's bad people, there's no bad guy in that. Like, there's no villain.
It's very hard to find a parallel TV show to it. It's feel good in the best kind of way. So again, on with time. Those are people who, yes, for anybody who didn't realize, they're all from SNL, and yes, they've been around for ages, having a big impact on your screens, and they're all going to probably continue to. So there's a whole load of people we haven't covered. Literally, there's a load of people that we haven't covered. There's a bunch of people who are also only on for a year or less. Or a little bit more in some cases. So just a big collage on screen. Billy Crystal, Martin Short, Robert Downey Jr., ever heard of him? Joan Cusack, Ben Stiller was on there for a while, Sarah Silverman too, Anthony Michael Hall, Dave Koechner. You've got Damon Wayans, from the Wayans family, Janine Garofalo, and of course the ever mental, I think it's safe to say that now, Mr. Quaid. But I had to include him because if you didn't realize that the guy from Independence Day, who now looks like he lives under a bridge and acts like it too, he was also on SNL, folks. The list is just mind-boggling.
Like, such an like crazy cast limits.
Yeah.
that this guy's these things have.
And most of the people on screen are still kicking ass. Martin Short comes to mind because he is my spirit animal. With Only Murders in the Building, there's no signs of him stopping or any of these people anytime soon. So a couple of more honourable mentions. Now, again, Paul, it's just a screen crammed full of stuff so that people don't have to shout in the comments later. Kristen Wiig and Kate McKinnon and Adie Bryant and Vanessa Bayer and all of the other amazing, because you mentioned the female cast members proving that people are funny. Like Maya Rudolph alone, from Idiocracy to she's killing it right now with her own TV show. Kate McKinnon obviously blew up as a massive star. I think Adie Bryant will be back and Vanessa Bayer to have their impacts again. They've already had runs in shows and stuff. But you've got, and it makes me sad. We lost Norm Macdonald and Gilbert Gottfried, two very funny people in very unique ways. Rich Hall, the comedian, who a lot of people don't recognize until they realize they've listened to a documentary where his gravelly voice did the voiceover.
Yeah.
Fred Armisen, who is definitely from outer space in the best kind of way ever. Bobby Moynihan, who I actually think may be the most talented actor not yet to get his break from all of SNL. And it's weird because you've got Keenan. Can't talk about SNL without mentioning Keenan.
Yeah.
Keenan and Kel, way back at the start.
Keaton is now become part of the furniture, though.
Yes.
Like, as in, not in a bad way. I want to point it out, not in a bad way. But he has become such a staple within SNL culture that it's like, and I love him. I love him every time I see him.
Yeah. And there's somebody else in there that a comedian I love. I'm mentioning Colin Quinn. He's the bottom left. A lot of people go, I don't know if I know Colin Quinn. Well, you know the effect he's had, because if you haven't watched the stand-up specials, you've seen him in things like Grown Ups. You've seen him in lots of other things, actually. But he's also kind of responsible for the idea that he did a show called Tough Crowd. He brought comedy to MTV in a lot of ways. And he helped change the culture of how stand-up was seen in mainstream entertainment. Colin Quinn, cool as bones. Now, Paul, I'm going to get selfish and I'm going to just call out a couple of people that I think are, again, often overlooked, but will go on to have a big impact. Will Forte recently did a show about murders in Ireland. It was a little bit of a hit during the summer. Also, he's MacGruber. I think Will Forte and a massively underrated and underwatched TV show called Last Man on Earth, even. I love the man. Cecily Strong. She's doing well with Keegan-Michael Key on Schmigadoon. This is somebody who's a triple threat, can write, can act, can dance, can sing, whatever the quadruple threat might be. And
also, a fantastic sketch with Bill Hader, one of my favorites.
Okay, I'm not going to start guessing which one because there's a couple that come to mind. We'll definitely be talking about that after. And Bowen Yang. I'm mentioning current cast member Bowen Yang because he's got that breath of fresh air thing that when he leaves SNL, I'm going to be watching him so closely to find out how he changes entertainment, because I get the feeling, Paul. I get the feeling there's another Bill Murray out there, and I think it's Bowen Yang, somebody that's going to have that really long career, really changing and upsetting things. So I'm excited about it.
And if not that, I could see them doing the late night talk show circuits.
God, I'd love Bowen to take over from Seth in a few years if that is to be in the cards. But Seth, I love you. Don't worry, I'm not wishing your job away. So Paul, I'm going to try and call it there because I have more and more and more images that we could show. But this episode can't be 5 hours long.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, which is, look, we probably haven't mentioned everybody that we would want to mention, obviously because SNL has such an impact. It's 50 years kind of thing, but of a show that's incubated so much talent that has impacted movie, TV, writing, producing, everything you can ever think of within TV and movie. There's nothing else like it for finding and producing talent, and that's why we're talking about it today.
Exactly. And Brian says, I love a bit of Rich Hall. And Brian, did you know, just before we go, did you know that Rich Hall was an SNL alum? Because Paul, you mentioned something that we've kind of left out that I think should be said as maybe the last thing, and that is, it's not just that it's a talent factory. It's that thanks to Lorne Michaels and everybody involved, it's how they keep that cycle going. It's the fact that they'll go and they'll watch stand-ups, the fact that they'll give auditions. It's the method that they've applied to that talent factory that it keeps unearthing the diamonds in the rough, or sometimes just diamonds that are sitting there waiting to be found.
Yeah, there's a scene within Studio 60 of the head writer and one of the cast members going to see a stand-up comedian for a writer gig, and that's very indicative of what actually happens within SNL as well. And it's just great. It's writers and talent going to see these people, seeing that they're good, that they might be raw, or they need a little bit of help, or but they got something there, and then taking them on, and then really kind of like as we said, talent factory, really remaking them, kind of giving them the experience, letting them try out stuff, let them fail as well, kind of thing, and then out comes stars that impact movie and TV industry for years to come.
For decades and decades, and long may it last. So, Paul, that was our look at the entertainment incubator that is SNL. Looking forward to the Saturday night movie. If you're in the States right now, it's released as we are speaking. If you're in Ireland, it's released in January for some weird reason. God knows. Hopefully, we'll be able to rent it here on a service of some sort. Well, with that, in the best Chevy Chase, I'm Chevy Chase and you're not, I'd like to say, I'm Patrick.
And I'm Paul.
And we've been Heroes Out, and you haven't. And we would love a little like and a subscribe. But if nothing else, please just join us next week, because we're going to be talking about something equally weird. See you then.
Yep.
Bye.